Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, it's like out in rural counties might have to go
Test 1, 2. Tom, can you hear me? What's your picture wrong? You got a picture with what?
Share. Share. Where's my?
All right, Nicole, do you want me to do the whole thing, or do you want to say hi and introduce yourself? It's probably not long to you. It is your meeting.
We are recording, just so everybody knows we are recording. We are recording. Good
afternoon. Thank you guys for coming to discuss the potential for the redevelopment of the Port Consolidated. I appreciate you guys taking your time out of your day to be here. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Laura.
Hello, how are you? Great pleasure. Is it too hot, too cold? Too hot. Too hot? All right. Maybe that'll get it going again, or we could open that door maybe. Everyone's left open?
No, because
No?
the buzzer will.
Oh, okay. Sorry, everybody out there in YouTube land or Facebook, that we are running just a little bit behind. We want to make sure everyone can get in here. So I think the camera's here, but I'm going to play to you all. And if people need, we're going to have more records from this meeting posted tomorrow. So I'm not going to really worry about that right now. So I'm Laura Dietrich. I am an urban planner with Half Associates. This is Noah Robles. He's a junior community planner, and I have been working with the city of Plaquemine since 2006, pretty much consistently, with the exception of when I was Baker County's director, from probably 2017 to 2022, but still always kept in touch and coming in and out of town. So with that, I want to give you kind of a little bit of background. Who's going to click for me?
I am, but I gotta stop for a second because I gotta make sure that
Sorry,
this
we're getting a little
show.
technological
There we
situation
go.
because we have to post it.
I wanted to make sure that I had the closed caption on.
All right.
Okay, let me know when you want me to.
I'll just do this with my thumb.
Okay.
Or I can just, I'll just say click. How about that? Okay, so, and we can go past that. And past that as well. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to just kind of bring you up to speed on why we're here, what's been going on in the last year, and what this particular focus is all about. So, Community Planning Technical Advisory Grant is issued by the state. Every year they only issue so many. They have a budget that changes every single year. And that legislature, of course, this last session went double extra innings, right? So it takes a little longer for them to come to the budget determination and how much they're going to issue. And then all of us that write grants that got them in on time have to wait until the end session, review the grants, and make their selection. So they get hundreds of grants. So it's, everybody works really hard to try to write the best grants that speak to how to serve the city of Palatka, as well as meet the requirements of what they're looking for. So this is batting 1,000. The city's won grants back to back 2 years in a row. So we've got good grants going for you guys. So what that grant does is it's seed money. So it's not to solve an entire city's problem, right? It's not hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, but it's at the most $75,000. So last year, the CPTA grant was used to let you guys, the citizens, the stakeholders, the business owners, direct what the most important 5 things were, top priority 5 items. And the reason why we picked 5 is because there's a lot of what we call like buckshot planning that some towns tend to do, which is taking on too much at once and then you don't finish anything, right? So if you just pick 5 things that you can realistically accomplish and get to right away, then you make those baby steps you need to the next thing. And so that builds momentum. And the city has had ebbs and flows. For those of you who've been here, how many people have been here more than 20 years? All right, how many people have been here less than 5? So somewhere in between 5 and 20 is everybody else. All right, so you've been here long enough to know. There's been momentum, right? You get going, and then all of a sudden there's a shift or a change or turnover, and then all of a sudden we kind of lose a little momentum, and then you get it going again. And so that's been one of the things over 26, 27 years I've seen, and that's pretty common for any town that's smaller, let alone bigger cities. So last year what we did was the action plan. If you haven't seen that, it's on the website. This is what it looks like on the cover. But this is only one part of it, because it's a lot bigger. Because what it has is a full market analysis inside of it that's based on the same distance, a 90-minute drive area that the chamber uses for Putnam County and Visit and Economic Development Commission. We wanted everybody to be equal and consistent on how they're approaching the audience they're capturing, or the sample, if you will. So all that information has been available for the last year on the website. So what that led to is one of the top priorities from last year's action plan is the Port Consolidated site, which is the gateway to the city. So as you look coming over the bridge, you can literally go before, after, right? So you're seeing Port Consolidated, a hardened site that was built in the early 1900s, then rebuilt in the 60s. Actually, 1980 is when that building was built. And then, of course, everything that you've watched evolve on the south bank, or south side of Reed Street. So with the Water Resource Center, with the building that the city did the deal with, if you've been here long enough to know that that was actually a city-private-public partnership with Charles Douglas and how they've taken over and worked with some of those buildings over there, and they've been really successful. So we want the same thing for this site. So with that, you can go and move on a little bit. So that's input. So there's a couple things that are going to come out of this particular focus. This is not the same kind of planning effort that we did last year. Last year was more, let's nail down a couple things we need to focus on. This evolved from that grant. This was one of the top priorities of how to address it immediately. The city has already been working on this site. So if you've been keeping up with it, they've been working on the current status of the building, its viability, is it able to be used for short-term uses, which we'll talk about in a little while. And then, of course, cleaning it up and getting it user-ready, right? Not just for a temporary use, but let's face it, if and when, and I don't want to say if, when this site gets redeveloped, most likely it'll be demolished, right? They'll clear it, and they need to do something that's working towards the density of that corner. But nonetheless, they got to ready up the site. So the city's been very proactive on doing that, and they have all the funding that's paying for it too. So they've done their homework on that. So we're making good strides. You might not feel it because you can't see it, but it's happening. So with that, the main deliverable of this action is going to be us working with multiple partners we have on our team that are looking at market. These are people that are some of the top in southeastern United States that literally look at local brands, regional brands, and national brands that can do urban footprint markets. Otherwise, you have the smaller footprints that you see, and a lot of businesses are going to that. So then we're also working with our own design engineering firms to look at all the possibilities that can happen on a site that's this compact. And then we're also looking at the public-private partnership and legal options of the way land deals are done. And so those of us that have been in economic development for a long time, there's several ways to do things. The city recently, again, acquired this due to a land swap and a transaction. So in this circumstance, it's going to be a buyer, right? So, but we'll get into some of those because I know that your input, and we'll share a little bit of the input from the last time that came in through the public, but everybody's got a different opinion and it matters, and we collect all your thoughts. We're going to be documenting all of those, summarizing those, and making sure that those are published. We don't really know the answers exactly to what this is going to be, because we want to have your input on it, but there are some things to think about, and we're going to talk about that today. So you click. All right, so you know where the Fort Consolidated site is. I don't know if you all realize, but a community redevelopment area is a defined geographical boundary. This is that boundary, so this map right here, so 11th Street to the river's edge, 2 to 3 blocks on either side. So basically, there's a plan for this area. And what is in that plan can occur by using property tax dollars from the folks that are paying taxes in this boundary. And there's a whole frozen valley, I don't want to get into the weeds on that, so that's a separate kind of educational thing, but basically a portion of taxes after the year that that plan was adopted are returned into a trust fund that gets to be used only on properties in the boundary and only for things that are in the plan. That's the most important part. And you want your plan to be kitchen sink as best as possible that's viable. So everything from affordable housing, economic development, light cleanup, code enforcement, public parking, open space, things like that. So the greater good of the area. So basically, you're getting some of your own money back to improve the value of yourself and those around you. Perfect utopia would be ultimate perfection, right? So.
When does the CRA end and how much money's in the current budget now?
Okay, that's a totally, I can get the answer for
All
you,
right,
but that's not why we're here.
Okay.
But I will follow up.
Well, I
with
mean,
you.
I was just,
Yeah.
I feel like that
I
should
can
be
do that.
relevant when you're talking about, but maybe not.
But actually it's not. I'm just trying to tell you, where we're at. I mean, it's relevant in life, but to this particular meeting now. But I will give you the answer to that question.
But, okay.
So, but anyway, I just wanted you to know where we're at. We're in what's called the Central Business District, the CBD, because that's the Central Business District of the CRA. Anyway, but yes, I will answer your questions. All right, so click. All right, so this is just a quick snapshot. I pulled it out of the market study. The market study is much larger, but this was an interesting page that just gives a snapshot of the folks in Plaquemine and frankly in Putnam County that drive within a 90-minute drive. So that's folks that predominantly usually live here, and then they drive and leave and they exit to go to work and then come back in. There are also people, and we've tracked all that as well, so if you want to copy that study, that should be on the website, but we'll double check. If not, we'll repost it with this, because there's a lot of good data in there. And it's qualitative and quantitative. So it talks about how many people are leaving for work, how many people are coming in for work, how many people live here and leave, how many people leave and don't live here, and how many people live here and don't leave. So it's capturing income, housing, and you can see it's slowly creeping up. So the negative, the deficit in housing units is actually hopefully coming up to a wash, right, a zero level. But it's been pretty consistent over the years. But with the cost of living in St. Johns County, I think that's why you're going to slowly but surely start to see more growth out here. So with that, click. I'm just giving you kind of a taste of the background. All right, so let's talk about the site. Because today we're only here to talk about this site and how you feel about it and what your thoughts are. So they are 3 parcels. They consist of 0.70 acres total. They're just bifurcated that way. I'm not sure why they're created that way. Maybe back in the 40s when it was first created, they may have had separate little buildings there, but in 1980 this was built. So you've got a 0.13 acre, 0.2, and a 0.37 acre that comprises that entire site. So it's less than an acre. It's completely hardened, so it's 100% covered. And hello, how are you? Come on in and take a seat. No, you're all right. So it's a city-owned asset. So some people would say, oh, that's terrible. Well, it's actually a great thing, right? Because that gives you leverage. That gets to say a couple things. That means we have a say in what goes there and what doesn't go there and how we want it delivered, and we can make conditions on that with the developer and the purchaser of the site, right? So they have, again, funded all their remediation, which is a fancy word for cleaning the site. So DEP is paid for all of that. They had a schedule, so they've been moving on that. And there's environmental studies that have already been done and cleanup's been done. So that's going well. Most importantly, it's the gateway to the city. Drop right off that bridge. That is the first thing you see. It's very impactful of what's going to go there, because that's your front door, right? So with that, great view shed, great access coming off local, and you've got 3 access points in there, actually 4 if you think about it, coming around Federal on 2nd or 1st, and of course 17 Reed Street. Again, that structure was built in the 80s, which I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but it's probably a blessing. It's not historic. Because if it were, and it doesn't serve the city well, then we probably have some disagreements in the community about taking down historic buildings. So I think it serves the city well that it is not significant in architecture or history. And it's zone C2, okay, so it's already got the right zoning that makes it as most flexible as possible for the uses that you want there. And frankly, in the future, when it gets redeveloped, the city, I'm sure will work with the developer to do what's necessary in agreement with what they want to put there to help them. And that gets into more zoning things like height restrictions and treatments or design and so forth. But nonetheless, the code and the land development regulations that hold developers to standards will be put in there. Plus, it's in the CRA, which makes it a more heightened level of sensitivity, at least in what the city wants. And again, that's done through a deal. So click. All right. So good old SWOT analysis. People are like, SWOT analysis. So if you haven't heard of that, it stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a planning technique, but people use it in banking and finance and all kinds of things because it's kind of a nice way to organize the good, the bad, and the ugly, the positives and the challenges. So again, strengths we talked about. Remediation, it's an asset, great access, non-historic. So what are some of the, and we're not here to tell you all these things. I'm going to want this to be very casual, very interactive. So like the gentleman wanted to ask a question. If you want to say something, feel free to jump right in. Yes, sir.
You said the DEP has already paid for it and remediated the site?
DEP has funded what is necessary to take the site through full cleaning. I don't want to get too much further into that. The city has all the documentation on that. So Ms. West and Ms. Cardy have been overseeing all that, and they have Montrose, which is an environmental firm that has been working with them on all these things. And I've been working with him subsequently to make sure that we're up to speed on where they're at and what they're doing, because we did a summary of all of their work. So I do know he has informed me that DEP has created a fund through the state for this site to finish the work, because there's a lot of work started in that.
Thank you.
Yep. So, go ahead.
I know this is like off, just dumb question. Like, was there ever any, because I know you said it's compact. Was there any consideration to taking other city property adjacent to this?
And we'll
and
get into
pack
that.
it? Okay, all right.
Yep, I like what you're thinking.
Yeah,
I like
yeah,
what you're thinking. And I can't, I mean, we can daydream, but we're here to.
And that's a whole, but I mean, if we're thinking.
Sure,
Yeah,
nothing's off limits.
perfect.
Okay, so whatever we want to talk about today, we want to be creative. Just because the site's this and this, doesn't mean we have to stay there. We need to think bigger, right? We need to think more, and I don't mean bigger in size necessarily, but be creative. Don't feel confined. So that's it. You're taking us right where we're going to go. All right, so weaknesses, compact site. Well, sometimes that's a good thing. Depends on who the user is. And frankly, the way development goes in this industry, with the expense of steel and concrete and wood and all the things that go into that, and the requirements for setbacks and buffers and landscapes and parking and runoff of stormwater and all these different things, gets into, well, instead of it being a small little building like it is now, it's going to probably be vertical, because you're going to need to make the money to make it happen, to make up for not using the whole site, and or expanding if that were ever happen. So it's not contributing to the CRA. So again, property that is owned by a public entity, by the city, does not contribute into the ad valorem taxes nor into the TIF. So that is what I consider, as far as from the economic development perspective, they're not contributing. So is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? That this site currently isn't contributing. So if you want it to stay in the public realm, that means it won't contribute. But does that always mean that's a bad thing? No, because it depends on what the use is and what people want to do with it. What's the best thing for the city in this location? So with that, opportunities. I'm just going to hit on these real quick, and then we're going to get into more discussion. So the market's improving, probably moving a little slowly, but it's coming around. More and more people are moving here. They wanted the charm, they wanted the cute town, and they wanted what they wanted in St. Augustine. And a lot of people in the last couple of years have said they're moving here because they love the history of Palatka, they love the feel of Palatka, and St. Johns County or St. Augustine is kind of, unfortunately, I used to live there for 15 years in the downtown historic district. And back when I paid $375 a month. I got the best of the last good days. Before now, I think my apartments are all $2,000 a month. But yeah, so I know what it's like to want to be in the cute little small town and have that thing. And so I think because Palatka has so much history, in fact, in some ways, I think even more, in as far as depth. So Those folks are coming here, and they've been at the meetings last year, a lot of them, and these are new people that want to preserve the area too. They care just as much as folks who have been there 30, 40 years, which is nice. So market's improving, cities little by little, getting momentum going again, getting activity going again. An opportunity is to demo the site, start clean, right? I mean, that's a rare thing when you get to have a clean canvas for development in a very, small compact town. So that could be very enticing to a developer and looking at, what are they gonna do with the city, how are they gonna work with them? And then if need be, and it's just a contemplation, where would your mind go on revising lot requirements or the zoning code? And I mean, for this instance, you still have a compact space to work within, so even if you were to be creative and expand around you, you still have to capitalize on maybe some of those densities. So be looking at the code, what does the code allow currently? Let's say the developer says, I want to go 60 feet, and it says I can only go 35 feet. Is there a compromise there? Things like that. Or a setback relief, because we want to go to the street's edge, like good, more urban, commercial areas should be anyway, as long as you've got ADA compliant walking and pedestrian space that's safe. So things like that, you might want to just kind of think about that. Like where's that public-private partnership going to come? If they're going to bring it and they're going to pay for it, then how can the city maybe help them? And then threats, and that's such a threatening word anyway. I wish there was a different word for that, but let's face it. I think the biggest fear is the unknown, right? We don't know what's going to go there. How much can you control? I mean, if it's the public market, that means that worst or least case scenario, someone could come in and buy the site and follow what's allowed by the code and put whatever they want there, as long as it follows the law. Now, if it doesn't follow the law, then the commission and the staff has a right to recommend denial and base what their decisions are on substantial competent evidence. But ultimately, it could get appealed if they don't, right? So what's got to go there has to be within the confines of the rules, or the rules that the city is willing to be a little relaxed on to get a good development there. Come on in. Hello. All right, so another threat is, aside from it being a potentially unflattering use, and/or let's say it's a fine use. It's just fine. We don't, it's an office with some apartments or whatever it is. But let's say that we don't hold them to any standards on design. And this is the gateway. This is your front door. I mean, you don't want it to be an eyesore. You want it to be something that's beautiful. So again, that comes down to the deal, right? You can negotiate development agreements when you're doing a deal. Sitting stagnant, which it has been. So that's not getting anywhere either. It's not contributing to taxes. It's not creating jobs. It's not bringing in revenue. It's not creating a buzz. So we need to move it. And then potential new use is what we're going to get into. And then I don't want to be a downer, but having done this a long time, I can tell you my first couple of years as the redevelopment specialist for the Jackson Economic Development Commission 20 years ago, I got very excited in the beginning. Like, someone's coming, we're going to do a deal, it's going to be great, we all get excited, they've got the capital, it's going to be amazing, like bringing a good hit for the city, and then it turns out that they didn't actually have the capital, they had their hands out too much. And it's like, well, we can't build your dream for you. You have to be able to sustain yourself. So I don't want to get people ambivalent, but just realistic. That sometimes I hope we hit a home run, and that in the next 12 to 18 months, there's a deal on the table for the site, and that it actually gets done right. But it may take a couple rounds. We don't know. So it's about getting the right partnerships, and that's what we're doing. We're reaching out to people who do this for a living, that are specialists in bringing the right users and having the right land. So if we can get those married, then that's the point of this effort. So with that, click one. Okay, go back it up to the other. All right, so this is where I want people to get into it. So let's first look at this, and I wish I could move this closer, but I think this is as close as I can get, right, Karen?
To the camera, yeah.
Yeah, because it's got to be on that camera. So you've all seen the site, it's right there. As you're coming over the bridge, you've got quite an apex because it doesn't open for ships. So as you come down, there you go. So that's what I was kind of talking about the before and the after. So with this site, there are the three parcels. So just think of that .70 is right here. You've got Federal Street. I can tell you that first things first is if this could be utilized and closing this part of the street so that the annex and City Hall can still utilize their access, that's definitely a way to pick up at least a little bit more, right? Now, as far as hypothesizing about other people's properties, I don't necessarily want to get fully into that. I think you guys can contribute your ideas if you want to bring those up, because these are actually not owned by the city. So technically, they're off.
No, I was more thinking for Consolidated City Hall at the annex, property
okay.
that is all owned by the city.
Okay, well, and that's interesting, and I think that's why we want to document these ideas. So how do you feel about City Hall? What year was City Hall built, Madam Mayor?
16.
Oh, 1960, so we've got a historic building on our hands. So that's, actually, I want to be able to write on this thing right there. So I'm gonna, no, you got notes going, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so take down what the community's saying as they start interjecting that. We used to be able to write on it. So 1916, so we've got a historic City Hall on the corner. And then the annex is
66.
Okay, so this isn't historic. This would be considered historic. Is this protected in any way already? Is that on a register or anything?
What are we talking about, City Hall?
Yeah.
No, not unfortunately yet.
Okay.
It's hopefully going to be in the process soon.
Well, and just so you all know, unless something's changed, so I will caveat that if something has changed very recently that I'm not aware of, but putting things on registers are lovely, and there's a benefit and a misnomer about them. So when you register things, what it does is it not only calls it out, it puts a moniker, it allows to draw attention to people when they're looking and going through towns to see historic things and tell a story. It also puts it on a register so that way you get more attention for grants. So if there needs to be restoration work and any kind of infrastructure, it makes it shine more, makes it more eligible in a way by calling out its history to be eligible. But I have to tell you, unless I'm mistaken, it actually doesn't protect demolition at all. So even if it's got the plaque and it's on the list, you could still take it away. Now, I'm not saying anyone wants to do that or that the city should do that. I'm just saying that I don't want people to think that once you brand it on the registry that it protects you from all things. So, the annex not being historic, I know back in the day, the old print press was in the majority of that building back there. I know that's been cleared out and donated. So I think is that building totally in play, Madam Mayor? Or is the back room
Yes,
still
you mean
empty?
the annex?
The annex, yes.
It's pretty well used. It's got-
That back huge area is?
Yeah, there are offices off the back. I mean, the larger back room is still vacant in storage for the most part, but there are offices.
No, yeah, I know the office is in front, but the majority of that
No,
building.
there's offices on the back.
Oh, in the back, okay.
Yeah,
So what department or divisions are in there now?
HR, code enforcement,
Okay.
planning and zoning.
Excellent, okay. So I knew planning and zoning was there. All right, so that's good. And code enforcement, by the way, was one of the 5, hang on one quick second. Code enforcement was one of the 5 things that came out of the action plan last year that people wanted to be taken very seriously and immediately, not just in CBD, but citywide. And I think literally before we even got the plan done, in less than 3 months, the city hired 2 full-time and a part-time code enforcement officer and immediately deployed them. So, I mean, they were moving. I mean, literally it was an action plan. Like, they've actually accomplished 3 of the 5. We're working on the 4th, and the only one left that hasn't been fully addressed yet is the branding of the city. But that might actually play into logical steps anyway, because don't you want to get your house in order before you have a party? So, I mean, I think that actually sets out well. So, okay. So we got City Hall, we got the annex, we've got federal, and then of course we've got private property owners that are around. So what do you think, when you look at a site that size, what are some of the things that come to mind when you're driving around that if you could only work within the confines of that property? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I'd say something like a weekend market just pops out right away, because when you come down across that bridge, just to see the site like activated outdoors draws your eyes to the building, and you're wondering what's going on indoors as well. There's those beautiful bay garage doors in the back.
So you're saying to keep the structure and activate the inside as well as the outside as a market?
Yes.
Full, not weekend or all the time? Because weekend means 2 days a week.
Yeah, so like I would say it's such a versatile property. I personally wouldn't want something consistently activated there, like a business that just operates from there. I'd make it more of like a community thing where people can set up a shop, like a table, market, something maybe like a flea market that's well organized and beautiful to look at and see as you're coming in. It speaks to the craft of this town and its heritage.
Right. Now, just so I'm clear, you said only on weekends, though. You didn't want anything going on Monday through Friday?
So I'm not really sure, it's just concept right
Okay.
now.
So market, so you'd be, the use though, as a crafts market, artist food, all kinds of things, kind of like Riverside, Avondale, Ram, artist
Yes.
market.
Uh,
It's under the overpass.
Yes,
It took us
exactly.
27 years to do that. That is just terrifying how something that simple could take so long, but now that's been wildly successful for years.
Yes.
And because it was, they took the rest of the under the overpasses, and they're now skateboard parks. And they're all lit up with lights and murals, and everybody's out there, and it's a great use of dead space. So this is not dead space, but it's sitting idle, that's for sure. And Larry, you wanted to say something on it.
Well, I wanted to say one thing, but I'll say several things since you recognize it. First of all, the annex was built in '56. Any building that's over 50 years old is considered historic. So in 2006, that actually could have a historic designation. The other thing is, since 2015, maybe a little bit before, the city fathers and mothers have said, oh, we're running out of space at City Hall, we need to expand. And the citizens said, we want to keep City Hall downtown. And the commission said, well, we have no room to expand. Now they have room to expand City Hall, and now I'm hearing, oh, well, let's get rid of City Hall and that. We, the citizens of Black, the majority of us, we want City Hall right where it is, right here. The property next door, they can accept it. Now, talk about sitting idle on the tax roll, that's a very good point. Guess what? If the city leases that to a for-profit organization, it has to be put on the tax roll at full taxation, which pays into the CRA and the general fund. Win-win for the citizens. Have the city leave the building the way it is. DEP already said it is move-in ready. They told the city commission, you can move your offices there tomorrow. It's fine. Just a little bit of groundwater problem that I think has been cleared up. It was totally cleared up before the city got hold of it by DEP.
So wait, you're saying move city, the
No,
activities in here into there, or what do you?
No, I'm saying that DEP said that the building.
No, all right, we got that part. What
Yeah,
are you
okay.
saying you should use with the Consolidated building? What do you want to do with it?
Let the city lease it to a for-profit group. Then it goes on the tax roll at full taxable value. The city gets tax money, the CRA gets tax money. Nobody can say, oh, it's sitting idle and it's doing nothing. It'll be getting taxes until the governor removes taxes. However, that's the way to get taxes, that it doesn't sit idle. Then when the city does actually have to expand City Hall, revoke the lease or whatever, and then they have room to expand City Hall. Expand this City Hall, build a similar building coming across the river. You see a beautiful Clutho design building across the river on the right-hand side. You look on the left, you see the river center. That's the gateway to Palatka. And I think that's why the only reason that I advocated for the city to get this property was so they'd have room to expand City Hall and quit talking about moving City Hall to the Jenkins swampland.
All right. Well, she touched on something I want to talk about. Let's talk about for a little bit temporary uses or short-term uses, or maybe they could turn into permanent uses. How do you all feel? And you go first, but then she's going next. There's a gentleman back. About using the site, and for now we'll say short-term, right? Let's go with a scenario that the city could do a short-term lease for the next like 12, 18, maybe 24 months while a deal is done for maybe a permanent redevelopment. Let's go with that scenario for now. So, thoughts on temporary use of the site as is?
So I think that's honestly the best way to go and the most sustainable way, because you get to build it as you save it. You build the value right into its valuation, and it attracts investors, hopefully the right investors, which is what's really important. If you just try to sell it right away, you're going to attract a lot of people who want to distress it and devalue it and use it for God knows what. But if you get somebody good in there who can bring value to it, then you're not just creating value, you're giving them an aperture to actually get in there and buy it from the city
Okay.
and activate it for the community.
All right. Keith Haring fan?
Okay. My opinion, strictly my opinion, When I invite someone to my home, I want them to be welcome. There is nothing in this town that says welcome, other than people. But when I come across the bridge, I see what Charlie has done on his side, and that's a great eye catcher coming over. But when I look to the other side, I see nothing that says, welcome to Palaca. I feel as though we need to say who we are. That first impression is a lasting impression. I feel as though the best of Palaca should be presented in that area. I want to know what Palaca is. I know the chamber's down there, but what is Palaca? What do you have to offer me? I'm coming into your home. I want to be welcome. I want to know what you're going to show me. What's your best? When we see that building, I would hope that it would be something so welcoming that it would make people want to stay for a minute or two, or a day, or 3, or even forever. So I totally understand if there needs to be an expansion of any city properties. I get that. But we can have a twofold situation. We can have something, I do believe we need to go up. With up, it gives us more flexibility on what we can do. We can harbor what we need in case we might need to expand either to the top of that level or to a back part of that level, so we're not boxed in. But we need something, whether it's just, I know we have a chamber, I know that, but that chamber should be front and center saying to me who you are. Make a statement. This is our chance to make a statement about our city, to say to everyone, this is the place you want to call home, my hometown. You want them to want that. So whatever that is, and it's not concrete, I do believe the way the city has beautified the other side with the river over there, get rid of some of that concrete and, or have beds of flowers or some type of greenery to soften up that concrete so it can give it a homey feel. And also have something like a little cafe that's there and kiosks of different things of who Palaca is, what's Palaca. The little pop-up shops that can be for mom and pop, where you can have someone doing embroidery. That's those little things that people don't see anymore.
Yeah.
That can be in those little shop areas, whether it's a pop-up for a minute or a season, and it goes away and another group comes in. But something that speaks to this city. No offense, I love the little quilt lady there. That lady got it going on. I'm saying that's something to talk about in Lakewood. I mean, in this little town named Palaca. Show her a little kiosk there that says, not only is there quilt thing, I'm not saying the quilt lady, but something like that. Show them where a hometown is and will be. I want to be a part of that. We can go to the hustle and bustle to Jacksonville. We can go to St. Augustine. We can go to Daytona. But how about this hometown? I want them to feel my hometown. And with that, we got to soften up that. Have an eatery. Nothing's fantastic, but a little quick something, homemade recipes or whatever that is. A bakery that really catches your nose when you come over that bridge, because I would lead right to it. Something that's soft, inviting, but yes, business for local people that can start up. Whether there's, like I said, the little kiosk, a little shop, whatever that is, something that speaks to me as different. I can always go to St. Augustine. I can always go to Daytona and purchase those big brand stores. But what about those little stores that the moms and pops, where they put their personality?
Sure, and I think that actually
kind
goes
of
to the
thing,
market
I
you're
think
talking
it's
about.
really,
All right, okay, so other ideas? Go ahead and then.
I think short-term use right off the bat is probably the way to go. You put in an athletic thing like pickleball, you could put in markets, but honestly, you could do those in all of the other vacant buildings downtown right now. I think this is a unique opportunity to put up a statement piece that'll take a couple of years, but we get in a good developer, hotel maybe, put in a hotel, shops on the first floor, parking garage.
interesting you said pickleball, because that's an actual recommendation that's been seriously considered, that's actually doable and costs just about next to nothing. So, and I understand what you're saying, and that's an interesting point of view that you gave, that there are other buildings where that could be done. I think the difference is, and to your point, maybe there are other city buildings where that could occur. I do know there have been discussions on, at least until a deal is done, to at least do something. And because it can be done with paint and tape, really inexpensively, it can be done tomorrow, so to speak, as long as the fire marshal and the building inspector clear all those things. But how does everybody feel about recreation for kids and for the city, as a temporary use till they do their deal? No?
We already have
Okay.
a lot of that going on at Jenkins,
Okay.
Community Center, frankly, so I don't, and also I don't think we need to replicate that here. I kind of agree with Lions and going more on the makerspace kind of idea for short term.
Sure.
Short term.
I'm just making sure everyone can
Yeah,
speak
my
their
initial
mind.
idea was a farmer's market, but we have a great farmer's market going on now with the courthouse property. And so that's going well, we've already got that, we don't need to duplicate that. But some type of makerspace where people can come in and make those things that we can be known for, having locally things produced, but they can also do pop-up shops and
Sure.
every little place to grab snacks. I agree. I think that for the short term, definitely for the short term.
Well, because pop-up, as long as the structure is sound and safe and clean and ready to go, which is what the city's pretty much at the end of making sure they're securing that. So pop-ups are great, they're cheap, as long as basic fundamental infrastructure is provided, restrooms, water, electricity for those users that can come in and do their thing. I do understand though, with the gentleman who you just said though, also. So I think, you're next. You get next.
I think, to you, what says who we are. We've got the most unique entrance, the main place I've been to. And I think you only have one chance to make this aesthetically pleasing forever. Whether, and I'm late in the game, whether short term or long term, I certainly see the city, if this isn't enough space, that this being the focal piece of the entire property with a developer, this building, and then the city, if they do move on somewhere else, and not throwing anything out, I don't know where y'all are, but we've heard this complaint. It's a great opportunity to redevelop another part of town. So my number one thing, if I come over that bridge before I want to see commercial or anything, I want to compliment what I see on the west side that makes everybody say, wow, what is this place? And you don't have to do that with a sign, you just, nobody has an entrance like we do. And our whole corridor needs lots of work. And so for me, the priority would be to make sure that it is so aesthetically pleasing when you come over that bridge. And, you know, certainly whether it has to be temporary or get to wherever we're going. But I would like to be open to this whole place, if deemed necessary, to be turned over to whoever.
I mean, but a lot of that goes to your master planning and your not zoning, but your, what you mentioned before.
The land development
What-
regulations?
Yeah. I mean, your design aesthetics, right? Because if whatever we say as a community we want, that's what we hold people accountable to. And if we have lax standards, people are gonna go to the, right, I mean,
Yeah.
right, if we want good, your design standards
Well,
say
that's-
what your community are.
That's why I'm saying the threat is that not knowing, it may not be flattering, and do you wanna look at, the code and lot requirements and
I
land?
mean, I think our community's behind, I think our city and county, we're behind on master planning and our design standards. And I think in 20 years, if we don't get ahead of it, it's gonna show, because developers are gonna come in and they're gonna do what they have to do, because our design standards aren't there. As far, to me, what I said was just taking a step backwards, like, just look at it, but this is probably the most valuable, second most valuable, whatever. Reed Street does 120 plus 18 or older impressions a week, right? The traffic on Reed Street is immense. And that's why I said just take a step backwards, because you could do something really spectacular by looking at the annex, looking at City Hall. I know that's a hot topic, but we can debate that, there's pros and cons of that. But I think you have to think mixed use and you have to think vertical, right? You think, what's going on in Tallahassee right now?
Yep.
Right? Eliminating property tax on homeowners. What's that gonna do to the city of Palatka? We already know we're in anemic tax base. 38% of the parcels aren't even on the tax roll. Right? So again, you could do an open air market on this. You could do a 2-story open air market, have people come in. You could do, 2 to 4 stories of residential and then have a rooftop restaurant, something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's gonna maximize
Yeah, mixed
your.
use is, mixed use, dense, and of course height. Remember, everything's relative to character, so.
Yeah, I don't think
compatibility is-
anybody in Palaca wants skyscrapers.
Well, and no one's going to build it because they can never make the return on the material.
Correct.
So what's interesting is that no matter how scared people get sometimes of something coming here that may be too much for them, well, a developer knows how to put together what we call a performa. Performa is basically like your house budget, right? You got your electricity, your water, your cable, your phone, your car, your insurance, your mortgage, or your rent. You have all these things to pay for, you got so much coming in, and then you have a deficit where you gotta cut, right? Well, they know when they look at the purchase of land, and taxes, and liability, and insurance, and labor, and cost, and there's always 30% more that's unforeseen because of a tariff, or a shift, or a war, something's gonna, there's always something that's gonna influence the market, right? So with piggybacking on everything you guys just said, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for just a second. So, let's say someone comes in and they want to do something, the city has decided they want to increase their design standards. And I'll caveat this, the reason why I'm saying this fun little devil's advocate thing is because I've seen it go both ways. So I wanted to bring it to your attention just to think about it. Because you're always trying to find the sweet spot on give and take. So when you enforce a lot of design guidelines, then that actually can restrict people to coming in because they may not be able to afford, small business owners may not be able to afford to do the things that are being required. Or, and unfortunately, the way a lot of the commercial builders go, they're looking to put in, frankly, as much as they need to in order to get a return, right? Because it's a bottom line kind of thing. Then there's developers that have a lot of pride in what they do, and they want to do good work, just like the locals that we've got here to put their money where their mouth is. I mean, Charles, for one, has done that, he's done a great job. So to have people that have pride in what they do, and it'd be great if it could be a local or regional. The odds are, hopefully, it'll be someone within the region. I would imagine so being such a charming place, this is not something that's normal on everybody's balance sheet or portfolio in a kind of national sense, right? But national brands are popping up everywhere. So if you impose too strict guidelines, that could deter some users, right? But at the same time, if they're too loose, then you have no control whatsoever except for in the development agreement. So that's what's interesting about this, is that if they were, the city, there's many options that we're gonna get into in our deliverable, our report that we're gonna have and present in May. But basically, it's looking at, there's a lot of legal ways to do things and how you could just flat out put it for sale and walk away, and they're gonna have to follow the comprehensive plan and the zoning code the way it is, at whatever state that's in at the time that they do the deal and apply for any applications, or they may not have to apply for any applications because it's already got C2 zoning, so the only applications might be variances, right? So sometimes you want to be careful what you ask for because you may actually deter people from coming, but at the same time, you don't want just carte blanche with no say. So the development agreements sometimes help tie in some of that control of the city.
Yeah, but I can play devil's advocate with that because the city's also, they've had that,
Then
we.
she was pointing at me.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
She gets to go next, because we want new voices before we get repeat voices.
So I'm curious, there's been a lot of ideas thrown out here about interim uses and other types of uses and just get it on the tax rolls or use it purely for, recreational and touchy-feely, good-feeling, looky uses. But I'm curious on has the city had any inquiries or interest in the property? Because, it's easy to say, let's just rent it and get some income, but unless there's an end user that's interested in renting it, that's really not that great of an option. All of the wonderful uses where we want pedestrians and maker spaces and new businesses and entrepreneurs and all of that, that's not free. So what's the city's budget for that? Are they going to be able to do that? Or do we want to have some of those uses and what we've talked about here, look at a public-private partnership for redevelopment where the developer is getting what they need in order to sustain financially the facility or whatever it is they build, and then the city is getting in
their portion of the development agreement, spaces for makers and farmers markets and those kind of uses that we're looking for. So I guess my question is has the city had any interest already? Because that's a good tell for what the market's gonna support here.
Well, and keep that as a rhetorical question for now, because this is literally just focused on input and open, free discussion about what we think and hope and wish, or don't wish, could go on here. As far as questions, we can definitely follow up, Nicole and I. Would you do me a favor in your notes, put little, like, follow-up question in parentheses, just to make sure those are things we're gonna get with the city on, to make sure we get back to folks.
I mean, I get that
Yeah.
this is our Christmas list, wish list.
Sure, but I want y'all to, you're being realistic though, I like it, because that's why I wanted to say, look, we're dealing with a small footprint, so option A, if no one wants to move and the city doesn't want to buy anything, and everybody's gonna stay right here, and just the site that the city owns currently is 0.70 of an acre, right? It's extremely compact. Now, a couple little things I just wanna bring to your attention, we're not gonna get down the rabbit hole on this, but some of the nice things that benefit the site in a kind of unusual flipped way is the fact that it's a hard surface, right? 100% of it is impervious. Because of that, and with regulations with the Water Management District, actually being more, I wouldn't say more challenging. I think it's kind of interesting. December 28th of last year, the Water Management District adopted rules that they have not adopted they haven't done an overall like this in over 30 years. And frankly, it's kind of interesting because what they're now requiring people to do, you'd actually think they should have always been requiring them to do, which is site-specific to your development. You now have to prove through calculations that you are treating your runoff and you're treating, making sure you're not running off on anyone else's property, but treating things, having the capacity to do so, and manage your site and your runoff. And there's always been these kind of parameters before. Now it's very specific. So it's not that things can't be done, there's just more speculation and there's much more focus on people having to justify each and every site instead of falling into a category. So it'll take a little longer, cost a little more, so what does that happen? What does that do? The developer has to put those considerations of cost and time in his performance as well. But because the site is completely impervious, that's a great place to start. If this was completely undeveloped, vacant, dirt, grass, that'd be challenging. Because that means that you've got to take a good portion, probably 20% of that site, and put it as a stormwater pond, most likely vault it. So but that's getting into the weeds with you guys on stuff that we do. So you're starting off with something that actually allows you to have certain exemptions. If it's 9,000 square feet or less, then they would get an exemption on treating. You still have to treat ultimately, but you wouldn't have to necessarily do a pond or a vault. And looking at the city's greater runoff and how there's things being treated because things were built so long ago, there's not a lot of relief except for going into the river. So, but our engineers do this every day, so they would get creative with that. So, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, I have a comment on a few things that I just want to fill in really fast.
Okay,
I've
go
had
ahead.
my hand raised for a while. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, I don't know a single one of them. I know a lot of them in Palatka. I don't know a single one of them that could afford rent in a place that looks like that. Whatever developer the city does go with, it's going to price out a lot of us. If we could do it as local as possible and use the space that's already there and activate it before we even start talking about developers, just to see what the space is capable of. I think
So
that's
again,
where
to
we-
the temporary use to see how it does while the city entertains deals and then weighs their options.
I
Yeah.
think with
Sure.
that approach, it creates an aperture for any local business person or entrepreneur with a little capital that they do have to get in there and attract the right investment. And work with
They
the city.
can find the right group too to manage it and have that lease agreement and the liability insurance and all the things that go with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, cities gotta protect themselves as well, so.
Yes.
Go ahead.
One of the most difficult things for anybody.
Actually, time out, I don't know, she's been very patient, let's let Mary go.
I'm usually not at all patient.
You've been very patient, forgive me, so go ahead.
Well, I'm sitting here dreaming about this, thinking about what everybody has talked about. We want something where we can be engaged in what's going on there. I love the gardens and the flowers of those suggestions. And I'm looking at the pictures here, there's just a little framework around this one, and people are wandering around inside. Think
And those
about
are just images, by the way.
Think
so
about, think about the Porch Fest. Wasn't that fun? Everybody went to hear the music. We don't have music someplace. What if we could figure out a way to have music going on there? I wouldn't even describe what kind of music, just music going on there. A place where people could sit and watch, and walk around, and have a nice welcoming, and I love that. You get off the bridge and you think, where are we? What happened? You told us this was a historic town. I'm interested, I live in a historic building, and I like to talk about the buildings and the history. As you can see, now you can't shut me up, because we're going to talk about the history.
That's good. But see, that's very important, because
But we've got
you are the town, so you
Yes,
should.
we got this here. So we don't want to forget. Everybody here has a heart and they want to say what they feel and try to figure out what to do. But we do live here, those of us who do, and we are engaged here. Some of the stuff I've done since I've moved here 3 years ago is to be engaged in the town with the stuff that I like to do, which of course is talking. But of course, speaking and teaching, and engaging in writing, some of you know that, and in bringing people together, having a good time, shopping, looking at our wonderful history, the North and South districts. Man, I know they don't have things like this up and down Florida. I know Florida. I've been here for 40 years, way south, looking for something like this. The authenticity of what we have in this town, even though some of the buildings are falling apart, flopping down, we know some of those. We all know, we live near where they're not being taken care of. But if we can be engaged in some way with our natural skills and interests, that might be a motif in some way to bring people together. I am, of course, concerned about money and all these other things, and the traffic going by, which is a deterrent all around, because you need to want to stop your car somewhere or not cross the street. I don't like to think about crossing the street walking, but when we do a flyover, we can have a bridge.
That's a meeting for another day. It's a wonderful dream, and it could be achieved someday with some good DOT support
I
and
haven't
some
got
big
that long,
checks.
I'm sorry.
Well, then you better get on the fundraising right away.
Well, it's just that there's so many things moving into this town
Yeah.
that we've enjoyed, that we could tell others about, if we figure out what to do there.
What do you think, Angela?
Me?
Yeah.
Me personally, I'd love to see something like an innovative hub there that covers everything. We have entrepreneurs in there, we have music, we have just different things where people can come in and see the uniqueness of Blackstone. Because I was an outsider for a long time, and I worked in Gainesville for a long time, and when I got here, really fell in love with the charm. And then I started learning about the different things, because the only thing I'd ever heard was, why did you move to Putnam County? It's the worst county in the state to live in, and I was like, have y'all seen what's here? So seeing an innovative hub right there would be amazing, because in Gainesville, we have an innovative hub that kind of blends all of these things that everybody was talking about, where you can have the bottom could be a market, and you can have the nice restaurant up top that you can overlook the river. That's an amazing idea, because we need more things for people to be able to do at the river and on the river, because that is one of the main draws that I've found that bring people to us, for the fishing tournaments, for the, for all the different festivals we have. Most of them are on the riverfront. So if we bring them something that they can go do, but I am concerned, like she is, about the traffic coming over the bridge. That's always been a concern when we first started talking about that site. A couple of people were after it when I first got here. But that was the main concern, is how do you slow down the traffic coming over the bridge so you don't have multiple wrecks there? So we need to make sure, you know, we put something there that's gonna keep that from happening. But I would love to see something like this on the Jacksonville Riverside front. It's got the shops and all that kind of different stuff. Love to see that right there on the riverside, because we have a walk, you can walk down the river, brings a lot more people, a lot more tourists, and that's something we're trying to do here.
Which sustains small business owners.
Exactly.
I mean, it's cyclical. People want things to do, but they don't want people to come. And it's like, well, you can't have one or the other. You need both. You need something to sustain you, so.
And we want to bring people in for a long period of
I
time.
just want to get input from everybody. Go ahead.
Well, several things. I was really impressed by the flowers and stuff, because I think it would be wonderful to come over the bridge and see some type of beautiful shrubbery, like, you know, flowering plants. And then I forgot about the traffic. That is horrible. Cars have actually hit City Hall. The traffic can't be slowed down. That's DOT. They're in charge of that. And a couple of years ago, they proposed moving traffic through Reed Street at 55 miles an hour with no stop signs all the way through Palatka.
Yeah.
And they're still pushing for that. That's
Don't
FDOT.
start, hey, don't derail us.
Nobody
Players
controls,
derail us.
nobody controls FDOT, unfortunately. But, I think that, from an aesthetic standpoint, initially, before, I think, I'm part of the Conley Snyder Mural Committee. We do the murals in Palatka, history of Palatka, history of Putnam County, and natural history. And I think, I'm going to bring it back to the committee when we meet next month. I think that we can get some donors to donate, and we can put some murals on the buildings initially that will be very attractive and get people, not modern art. People will come to Palatka to see modern art. They come to see our history and the history of Florida, the natural history. So if we had some beautiful murals on those buildings initially, on a temporary basis, 1 or 2 years, while the city decides what to do with them, I think that would be very aesthetically pleasing on the short term. The other thing is, I've heard all these ideas and they're wonderful, but I'm like, okay, well, this is happening 1 block over, it's already happening 2 blocks over. You all, Lauren Dietrich and your group, you need to get with some of these other developers downtown and find out what else is going on, because you're duplicating. There's the music center's going in on where the Pennies was, the bingo place. There's gonna be an upstairs dining area.
I will work with them for 2
There's
years.
more hotel space going in. So if you'll check with all of them, because this is
Yeah.
duplicating, and if you get too much of something, it may not be a go, because there won't be enough people to keep it in business. But I love the aesthetic thing about the flowers. I don't see why the city couldn't just go ahead and do some landscape. Of course, I know landscaping flowers get stolen downtown by people, but maybe the city could put in some nice landscaping right now.
Remember now, everybody's back to how, this gentleman, what's your name again?
Benji.
Ben. Alright, so, remember, just because it looks like it looks right now, just imagine, you can, I mean, because any developer, if the city wants to keep it and do agreements, anybody can do anything. We could take a jackhammer at that site. What needs to be done and what will happen and how you work with that and you look at what the implications are for impervious versus pervious surface and how, because remember, you've got to work with people that do all the design and build and engineering of these things too, because there are real implications to just chipping up all that concrete. But again, softening areas can be done so aside from a pot sitting on the curb. I'm talking about, let's think way beyond that, got to get way higher standards than that.
I wasn't quite through, I was talking about just initially, if it looks more attractive, it may be more attractive to a developer should the city be stupid enough to decide to sell it. However, let me point this out to you, which you're not aware of. I saw it said effective year built 1980. That's the property appraiser's note that says it was renovated in 1980.
That's-
It was
I know.
probably built in 1920s,
It was built in
20
the
to
40s.
40.
It was built in the 40s.
And I know who owned it all the way back.
That's what I
to
said
20s.
earlier. Yeah, I said it
So
earlier.
they're way older than 1980.
Not correct. What happens is, basically, the first time a structure is constructed is its original inception date, right? But over time, when there are improvements or the building even goes through minor to significant changes, that's called an effective date, right? And so over time that happens. So the last time there was any significant work done to this building was in 1980. So it's 46 years old as it stands now. By no means is the architectural style historic or of significance, so I think that's where the blessing is. Go ahead.
I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
We're thinking about something that will enhance the site. We're talking temporary if the city does decide to
Well,
sell.
short-term and long-term.
Short-term.
Yeah.
But my question is, if we see this site as a possibility and dress it up, I know I keep speaking the same thing, and I totally agree with people local would like to have a piece of their own history here. If we can dress it up to be inviting to someone that might want to purchase it. I don't want a white elephant, but if I could put some lipstick on that elephant and put a little dew on it, or dress it some kind of way, it makes it more palatable.
Sure.
So I'm saying if we dress it up, not just with a pot, but really beautify it. If we look downtown, going down the street, we see the planters, and we could see some type of awning there, or some type of something that's there that can dress it up. And inside, a portion of it to those entities that I was thinking, and the remainder can be for rental of pop-up, one-shop businesses that, you know, you could rent out a little doohickey thing for your office thing in the back area. But you can, the possibilities of that area, we have to make someone see your vision. We can't see it if we don't want to put the work in it to make it palatable. So I'm saying if we do that aesthetically and make it appealing to someone's that want to come in and have an idea, but not losing who we are and what this place, everybody comes here because they want my hometown. I'm sorry, nobody comes here, they will go to Jacksonville and everywhere else if they want that other stuff. But Palaca can be my hometown, and it should not lose that.
Right.
You
You
can
might have just
have,
rebranded the city, all right, so.
but I'm saying
We
you
got
can
it.
have the other stuff too without losing who you are.
Right.
And that's all I'm saying. We cannot give who we are, but we gotta tell them who we are because no one's paying attention coming over that bridge at this speed. Because do understand, I've gone to the other cities with the quaintness, and I saw something that was appealing. I went down 2 traffic lights down to the U-turn and came back to see what's going on. That's the kind of look we want here.
Sure.
I might be going over this bridge fast because an 18-wheeler is behind me, but I'm gonna put my blinker on 2 lights down so I can make a U-turn and come back and see what this is. You want them to come back and see who we are.
Well, that's an interesting point.
Signage, we need signage
Yes,
and
yes.
flowers.
So that,
That's all I'm saying. I won't say
no,
another
we're
word.
with it. Okay, so I want to give you a couple examples. Wayfinding is actually something that we've presented to the city as an option in the future when their budget allows for it, because that's a part of making sure.
Could you define that, please? What is wayfinding?
Wayfinding, and I was about to say, yeah,
Oh.
wayfinding is a fancy planning term for how you, and I don't want to say signage, because signage can be subjective, right? There's unattractive visual pollution signage, and then there's, wayfinding is much more complex than just signage. It's a way of helping you find your way, hence wayfinding. So as you go through a town, you understand where historical monikers are because they're consistent and they point out things and they tell a story. They lead you and they help you to explore and find things you wouldn't normally know, because you can't take for granted that someone that's walking through town is gonna know what's happening. And that's why wayfinding is a holistic plan of how you manage a city, and you bring visualization and education and direction to the experience. So, but I wanna give you, to kind of touch upon several things y'all just said. So for example, my family in Washington State lives in a little town called Richland. And I have to fly into Spokane to get there, and then drive for 2.5 hours to get to Richland, through basically farmland and maybe 3 whistle-stop types of towns, which this was originally. And I can tell you, right when you're saying, you might go right by it, then turn around. I was literally driving in the rain, and I have this thing with libraries and old pharmacies, because old pharmacies always have the coolest original crafts inside. I don't know why that is, it's so cool. And I passed one that's been there from the 1800s and immediately hung a U and went back. And so I think that's part of the thing, is while DOT does manage this roadway, and we can work with them. I have gotten DOT to do things that everyone said I could never do, and I've done several of them, like building a dog park under the I-1095 overpass with a dog park. So yes, we can do it. Oh yeah, Canine Social #1. I know I'm Canine Social #2. It's called the block. But yeah, so anything's possible if you have a good suggestion, you have good ideas, it doesn't impair their greater mission, and you know how to talk to people that are in charge. Everything's doable. I don't understand no. There is no no to me. So there shouldn't be any no to you either.
No, you bring up a good point about the wayfinding, and I believe it starts at 95. One of the ground signs that says St. Anastasia State Park that way, and nothing about Green Yardstick.
That's right, yeah.
And that continues all the way until the left-hand turn on the road.
So, and I don't want to get, we're taking note of this, and that punctuates something we actually, the city asked us in November to put together an approach on wayfinding, which we did. Unfortunately, I mean, the city's got a few dollars and bigger priorities about health, welfare, and safety to address first before they can get into wayfinding all the other things. It's not that they don't agree and believe, it's just that they gotta manage the small dollars they've got. And frankly, that's also how we've been so successful on grants, is because if you focus on what are some of the things the city needs to do, and then we focus on that, and we check boxes, and we prove, not only to you, the residents, but to those who are funding it, that we're taking your money and we're actually doing it. And then now, it's resulted in another win that's gonna address putting together, basically, it's almost like an à la carte, support document for the city to say, okay, here's what we're dealing with, here are the ramifications if we tear out the site, implications of, I mean, from an engineering perspective, we're putting that in, from a planning perspective, we're putting that. We're also looking at the legal implications of how the city and the city attorney is gonna end up doing a development agreement, because there are many ways to do it, so that way they understand. So, wayfinding is very important, but we'll have to put a pin in that, because that is actually on the short list of what they understand we need to do. So let's talk about some reality on, I heard y'all talking about like temporary use, long-term use, and everything you said I think would do really well here. And I think, and because some of the largest colonies in the state of Florida are all in this region, right? So you've got your audience is actually home ground. So let's talk about the business world. So you have a little bit of, I want everyone to have optimism and creativity and activity. But at the same time, also I want to shed a little light on folks that develop and how they do this. So temporary beautification is wonderful for temporary use. And I say temporary as in it could be a year, it could be a year and a half. Who knows, that temporary use could turn into permanent use. We don't know. I think everything you guys are saying is right. And if that short-term use, so to speak, it does so well that becomes the use, then good for that, right? Because you gotta be open to whatever it is. But it's gotta be able to be something that's doable, that the city can afford to do, that they don't end up paying for, carrying the weight of whatever that use is. It's gotta be something that works for them, works for the people, and meets the needs of the city. But meanwhile, as far as any kind of permanent beautification that's gonna go on there, developers don't need lipstick on the page. They don't see what the average person sees. They don't see, oh, there's not some trees here, so I'm not gonna buy that site. What they see is, usually they say, I wanna clean that. I'm gonna demo the whole place, so I can do what I wanna do. Unless there are structures there that they can use to the best of their ability, which saves them money, right? So who knows? I mean, there might be the shell of the building they still put in play, and they take that roof off of there, and they don't have to do much gutting, because it's pretty much hollow anyway. So the building, the structure itself might still be useful in the temporary use and/or that permanent use down the road, right? But just so you know, the perspective of developers, they don't see flowers, and now murals are beautiful. Again, I think it's automatic. I can't believe there hasn't been murals wrapped on the building a long time ago, because this is mural central ground zero for the state of Florida. So that should have been done, even if it's empty, just because, if anything, the first entry as art. So, but again, just don't think that we need to spend money so they can just destroy it, because the last thing the city wants to do is make an investment that the developers can care about. And so here, you want to?
I did,
That's why
I'm back to the vision on the short term.
Yeah,
And I think softening that, really finishing that study way probably is economical, something that you can do. I don't know the details about it, you pull that concrete up.
If you pull the concrete up, it could impact what the developer's gonna have to do in the long term, but I'd rather my engineer answer that later. I don't want, so just play with the idea you can.
So not knowing what those things are.
Yep.
You do that because I don't know how many decades we spent trying to get this other side done over here on the riverfront. People have a hard time seeing the vision. You may understand what a developer is, but people in this community don't understand what
Exactly. Well, that's why I call it before and after.
Right.
They get to see the transition of something we've been working on for 27 years.
So it seems to me if you really soften that up where it looked really nice, it would have made that building more useful, or it stay understanding instead of someone who's coming in and saying, here's what I'm gonna do, and this things change all throughout the process. And you get a feel for what is acceptable to the
Sure.
community.
Well, and remember, everybody, this site did not become a city asset until recently, in the last year and a half. So it's not like the city's been sitting on it for decades.
It's been ugly a long
No,
time.
I know, but the city can only enforce through their code and the law what they can enforce through
I
the code.
understand, but now
So-
we have ownership. of it.
That's right, that's
Right.
right. So I'm just bringing reality in here, just making sure, because a lot of people don't know. So, this is now that the city can do something with it, the city is saying, okay, so what can we do from environmental perspective? Well, they've got their act together and they've taken care of that. What are we doing? Is the building, code ready? And so fire chief and building inspector will sign off on that. And then activating that, that means the city's gonna have to work with some group who's gonna have to manage that, and they're gonna have to pay for that if it is a lease. Now, if they use it for, public recreational, then that's a city insured and managed temporary use that goes in there. So remember, it's a city sponsored use, and that's one thing, and they decide how much money they wanna put into beautification. So, I mean, yes, does it need, it's the hardest space possible, absolutely. I mean, there's not even barely a patch where weeds would come out, which is amazing. I mean, I've never seen such a hardened site, so I agree with you all on that. I'm just trying to be a little realistic in what you can do, what you can't do. So temporary uses, it also involves somebody investing their money, right? So let's say they do a lease agreement, they put their money into it. Well, they're probably gonna wanna protect their investment, so if a group comes in, like a nonprofit does the market, and then they lease out, pop-up spaces, and like they do at farmers markets, you get like 100 square feet at RAM, that's how they schedule them. So then people wanna see, well, how much are we investing in that if the city sells it in 2 to 3 years? And then how do we recoup our funds? Well, they're not recoupable. Whatever you put into it under a 3-year lease agreement is, you're gonna walk away with whatever isn't fixed, right? So when we get down to the business relationship aspect of it, people have to consider those things. But those will come, one more shot, and then we're gonna close it out.
Okay. So it sounds like we're closing out all in agreement that we want the highest and best use for local, hopefully. And we're thinking about local entrepreneurs as well as local consumers and residents. And the idea is local is to attract people from other places as well. But it's run and operated by locals and for locals. That's sort of where.
Well, that's how it's gonna be most successful. In
That's how it's
in
gonna
smaller
be.
towns, that's
Yeah.
how it's most successful, when they're here on the ground.
Have we started talking about things like co-ops using that kind of language where we can actually provide resources to local entrepreneurs who may not have access or even,
Well, I can tell you that in the chamber, Laura Pavlos is not just running the chamber, but she's also running the Putnam County Economic Development Commission, which is kind of like a micro lab that helps work with that, and she's been working really hard. She's been here for years.
you say it was Laura?
Laura Pavlos, it's Laura, and then last name is Pavlus. And she's the director of the chamber and the Economic Development Commission, just down the street. And so she's been very, very active in a very short amount of time to get resources and involvement. I mean, I haven't seen that much activity in the chamber in the history of this town since I've been on first. So she's quite motivated, which is great. And so they're aware of everything we're doing. She's usually in the seats. In fact, she may be here later in the evening meeting. But we're all, what you don't see and what you don't know is the private sector folks. 3 guys, I helped them start their architecture firm in 2007. They're the architects working on St. John's, doing the building. So we're all aware of what's happening. And frankly, competition is good because it brings property values up and interest from other developers that want to get in. And not necessarily duplicating services, but having more activity actually draws the attention of people who want to invest their money here. That's what makes them interested, because you have to have critical mass in order to make money. You can't open a restaurant if people only go once every 3 months to your restaurant. It's never gonna make it. You have to have, consistency, people in this town spending their disposable income on things in their town. And I know that everybody wants places to go and things to do, because we've been talking about it for decades. So I know for sure things will be successful here. Any final thoughts that you want to get into?
I just have one question. What if any incentives is the city looking at packaging with this?
I'm sorry, say it one more.
Are there
Oh,
like any,
Well, that can't be developed until there's actually a deal. I mean, once a user comes to the site, then it's gonna be based on those terms. Every single development deal is based on, first of all, what are they bringing? What are they telling the city that they need in order to, close up the deal? And anybody that's really done this is gonna look at, frankly, the resources they know are very limited. So there's a lot of things, where towns don't have money, they look at things like REV grants, which is where you get relief on taxes over 20 years. In other words, the city doesn't have cash to give, but they can do in kind. So that's giving them relief on either taxes or regulations, or maybe allowing them to put 4 stories instead of 3. There's all kinds of deals, but every deal is totally unique and based on the merits of that particular project. So I couldn't possibly answer your question, because
yeah, but that goes back to my question, my first question I asked.
Yeah.
It's in a CRA.
There's 2.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things. You never go one shot. When I do a deal, I look at brownfield, which this is, so there's brownfield grant money, boom, big time there. Then we've got REV grants, you've got TIF, you've got, grants from the state, you've got DEP, there's all kinds of things, and the more layers and the more support you can get are great. Developers love that. And that's from small businesses to big. I'm doing evaluation right now on the school board site downtown, which is temporarily a funky place, but no matter how small or how big, everybody's looking for partnerships, and developers know that Plaquemine couldn't possibly give them something that's way beyond their reach. They know that. So there's always a way to do it, but at the end of the day, they've got to have the interest and feel good that they can make the numbers work. Yes, ma'am.
One thing I forgot to mention, when we talk about whether it should stay in the city or go to private, it's off the tax roll and the city, all this kind of stuff. When the city applies for grants, and the majority, let me repeat, the majority of everything you see the city do comes from grant money. The city doesn't have money. To get a grant, the city shows matching funds, and their property ownership goes into part of that matching fund. The value of that goes into the matching funds. The environmental center, other ravines goes into it. This piece of property, that will go into consideration. They have to put up a monetary match. The property value goes as a monetary match. It behooves the city to keep property so they have the monetary match to get the grants to keep on doing what they're doing.
Well, and when I
It's a
spoke,
point of interest.
yeah, and when I brought up the grants, I'm talking about not just, we write grants, obviously, for all our public clients throughout the state, but we also do it for private. So money can be raised for developers just as much as it can be for cities. And sometimes it's for development on behalf of the developer, but through the city, because the city, in that respect, sometimes those grants that help the developers do need to go through the city. So there's multiple ways. All right, one last question.
Is it an option for the city to actually keep the building?
Anything's possible. That's why we're here. We're talking about, I mean,
Just
sky's
opening it up
the
to,
limit
local
within reason.
entrepreneurs could, activate it, develop it,
In May, there's gonna be the final report on this. That's not just required by the grant, but it's because we need to hand the city, not some big book full of just randomness. It's literally dance steps, right? Here are some dance moves, and some of it's gonna be set to some polka, some's gonna be set to some paso doble, some's gonna be to hip hop, and some's gonna be to foxtrot. I mean, it's gonna literally lay out, here are the different options the community says they wanna look at, they want you to entertain, and here's how to legally get there. Through the business world, through your own regulations and policies here in the city, and here are options we want you to consider. The city, in order to get this posture, and just so you can see how this works in the development. So let's say the city wants to go, the next 18 months, 24 months temporary, they do the market, they work out how to get it going, with maybe a lease agreement, and, it's kind of hard to do that. That means someone's gotta step up and all of a sudden create, 501c3 or 6 and get this going, to then manage it and take on all that responsibility and risk. So, that's also interesting. That could take time to get someone to own it. It's one thing to say it'd be nice, but you're like, but I'm not gonna do it, so you guys do it. But see, everybody tends to do that. That's why people walk away, and people like me are still in the kitchen cleaning. So somebody's gotta own the idea. You can give it birth all day long, but to pull up your sleeves and make it happen is another thing. So if they welcome that, they can put that out there. That can go out through like an RFQ saying, we're looking for a partnership to do that. That's the last order to get something like that, someone's gotta actually do it.
Yeah.
Okay, see what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and they're not in the business of going door to door and asking who that person's gonna be. So, 'cause they've got a few thousand other things they're
So,
doing.
would you be taking proposals from those types of people?
I
or
won't be.
Would,
And then you're ahead of yourself just a little bit. So first things first, folks are, oh, I'm sorry. Well, you have to speak up, say, Laura, I got a question.
I just want to say, everything sounds good, and I was born and raised in Putnam County, and my kids were all educated here, but now they graduated from college, and when they come home, they was like, Mom, there's nothing to do here. Some live in Orlando, some live in Gainesville, one of my oldest daughter moved to Virginia, and my son, he played football here, and now he lives in Indiana, but when they're home visiting during the holidays, they always say, there's nothing to do, we have the same type restaurant. So some of the things, and they're between age 28, 26 to 30, 32. So some of the things they like doing is like maybe a photo op. Like a lot of young people like photo ops, like taking pictures, posting, you know, different murals, or maybe commissioning art from our college students or our high school students, posting it, or, you know, just doing like a art part, different little things. Other kind of restaurants other than like burgers and stuff like that. Vegan food, they like vegan food, you know, different little types of stuff like that. We have to think about like the people living here as well as stuff that attracts tourists.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, I mean, that's interesting. Did you say art park? 'Cause that's cool.
A little art,
Yeah. Right, but I mean, an art park that would be interactive, that could be retail, would be, that way you've got static and fluid art. You know, because art can move too. I mean, art is anything. So, interesting. I now have like a whole idea in my head of what I'm doing. But, okay, so, all right, so everything you said is going to be prepared, and it's gonna be given back to you all. We have, make sure everybody is signed in, giving me your email address if you wanna receive emails of everything that's coming out of this event. If you're not into that, then just know you can reach out to Nicole Ott. She will make sure that her information is provided, so you can get with her and she can provide it. Some people don't deal with computers and social media. I'm not a big social media person myself either. So some people just want a hard copy. So if you wanna come down and get a printed out copy of things that are going on, that's fine too. So whatever you're into, we can provide it. The next step for this is working on those different segments of design that include ramifications, right? And what those consequences are when we go this way or that way with regulations. So we want to make sure we're providing as much illumination and opportunity and knowing the unintended consequences if you go left and what's going to happen over here for the city. Because again, you know, we're all helping each other trying to make that next step. So the next step is really two things. One, moving on temporary use is something they can do at any time. And that's good. This is looking at what do people want for long-term use, as well as capitulating on what you guys have said about temporary use. So, and helping them with the toolbox that's gonna help them make those decisions. So that way, because remember, if you don't prepare, it'll happen to you, whether you like it or not. So you wanna have some education, information, and some direction on how to manage that. Otherwise, something may occur that you wish didn't happen and we want. So anybody want a last thought before we all clear? And then we're having another meeting at 5:30? Okay. Madam Mayor, you want to close out? You got a final comment, Ms. Correa? All right. Ms. Lasky, you're awfully quiet there.
Commissioner Campbell?
Commissioner Campbell?
I'm here just to listen to, the input, and I'm grateful for what I heard, and there's a lot for us to take into consideration, and just know that it's not falling to you.
All right. Good to see you, sir. She's across the street now, you know. She's working with the folks that made all that